Cool. Thank you for coming, everybody. We're here to talk about the 701 Rio project today. This is a great project because it's right up our alley. We have a lot of experience with that, but first I'm going to introduce the team, or let the team introduce themselves. So my name is Edward Harris. I am the project manager on for this project.
My name is Ashley Matthews. I'm the vice president of pre-construction.
My name is Emilio Montano. I am the safety manager at 701 Rio.
My name is Caden Fish. I will be the superintendent for 701 Rio.
So we'll jump right into some of the relevant experience that we have with a project of this nature. It's very similar to some projects that we have done in the past. As you guys have seen, we've been shortlisted, so you've seen it in our RFP that some of these projects are very similar with both their exterior skins, their locations, and everything to this project. Ashley could talk about one of the projects that we did work on here.
So in the Champion Office Park building located in Austin, Texas, it is located in their flash flood alley. So we did have a little bit of an issue with our dewatering, but we were able to talk to our trade partners and figure that out pretty quickly and still keep on schedule.
And then additionally, I was the superintendent on 1701 Platte, and we had a lot of glazing on the exterior facade of this building. We ended up having some lead time issues. We were able to overcome those with the help of our pre-construction manager, as well as our good relations with our glazing trade partners.
So this project is very similar to what we've done before. So a lot of glazing, downtown, tight access, zero laydown, things of that nature. So it's a 5-story office building. It's got 4.5 floors underground of parking. It's got a couple amenities with the rooftop terrace, the gym, first floor lobby, things of that nature. But I'll turn it over to Ashley to talk a little bit about our pre-construction methods and some of our estimate on this project.
All right, so the big number for this project is $35.3 million, which breaks down to about $155 per square foot. And we were pretty active with our pre-construction on this, and we'll make sure that we continue to work with our trade partners to ensure that we get everything on time and on schedule. And I'll turn it over to Edward.
So for the sake of time, we're going to jump right into how we're going to phase this project because we think that's the most important thing. So we've broken it down to 4 major phases because we believe the most important milestone for this type of project is going to be the dry-in phase. So the dry-in phase allows us to get to that point where tenant improvements can start to happen. As a core and shell space, that's always like the driving factor, is trying to get those tenants able to start fitting out what they need and get their individual construction companies, or if we're selected, helping them out to do those tenant improvements. So jumping into the demolition and abatement, we believe this is a very important way to start the project off strong. And so there's 2 buildings that are already there that we need to be removed. And so we're going to start off with getting the site secure, getting some site laydown fence, starting that abatement process, getting inspections done. And I'll turn it over to Ashley. She could talk a little bit about our costs as we start moving into the first phase of this project.
All right, so this is the smallest number you're going to see in this presentation today at $2.1 million for demolition and abatement. That's about 6% of the cost, and we'll be on this for about 4 months. And part of this estimate includes our safety budget, and I'll let Emilio talk about that.
All right. If you can hear the sound of my voice and you like safety, clap once. Dang. All right, tough crowd. I'm no Greg, but I figured I'd give it a go. Safety is always kind of a dreary subject, but we want to make sure that we make it at least interesting to listen to because it is at the forefront of our priorities. This phase deals with asbestos in both buildings that we're going to be demolishing. We want to make sure that people are dressed in the proper PPE to deal with something like that, as well as taking the proper dust control methods, hose down during demolition to ensure public safety. I'll turn it over to Caden to talk about quality control.
Yeah, so we're going to be using some pretty standardized and widely accepted abatement and inspection checklists for quality control here. Our main goal here is just going to be making sure that we remove all the hazardous materials from the site the first time so we don't have to deal with them during the excavation phase. With that, we'll move on to phase 2.
So these are not the buildings you're looking for. So we're going to move quickly into getting them out of the way and then moving into the excavation phase. So now that we've gotten what we don't want out of the way, we're going to start going down. And so we're going to take over a little bit more real estate at this point to make sure that we can get trucks in and out, working closely with the city of Austin to make sure that we can take over those roadways, that public safety is taken into account, that we can officially start moving away some of that dirt, some of that stone. And so we start moving into a little bit more of the cost side of things at this point. Things are starting to ramp up, more people on site. So I'm going to turn over to Ashley to talk a little bit about that.
All right, so as you can see, your number starts to increase just a tad at $6.5 million. That's about 20% of your cost, and we'll be on this phase for 10 months. And I will let Amelia talk about some safety concerns.
Yeah, so large safety concern for this phase is going to be the giant hole in the ground. We're going to ensure that we have guardrails around the excavation site 24/7. Just don't want any mishaps that can be prevented. We're also going to have some perimeter lighting for when it gets dark around the site, just for the same reason. Another large concern for this is going to be the flash flood alley that this site happens to be in. We want to make sure that we have some safety precautions in effect just in case an incident were to occur in that excavated site. And I'll turn it over to Caden.
We understand that neighborly relations are very important, and we're committed to getting those started off right from the very beginning. In quality control, we're going to be utilizing various different things to do this. So, number one, we are interested in looking into putting seismic monitors on the historic building next to the site. We want to make sure that we are doing inspections on the foundation of this site prior to starting excavation activities, tracking down deficiencies and any damage in the existing foundation. With these, we'll be using crack monitors to ensure that these are not expanding or contracting at any point. We'll be testing these regularly. In addition to that, in order to minimize vibrations, we're going to be using a milling head, and that is also partially because of Austin's regulations against blasting. We have worked in the area, and we have used milling head and had success with this type of excavation. Lastly, we're going to be using a third-party contractor to track the locations of our tiebacks and our shoring and lagging system to ensure that they are not moving around. Additionally, we're going to put reference hubs on that historic building to make sure that the soil is not settling at all underneath. If we do notice that the soil under the historic building is settling, we will be using a recharging technique to restore the groundwater levels back to the original levels. Let's look at phase 3.
So we'll go to phase 3. So now that we're moving into a lot bigger portion of the structure. So trying to get out of that hole we just dug, trying to get to the top out as soon as possible. It's a lot of concrete. It's the biggest scope of work on this structure. And so there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing to try to coordinate to make that happen fast. So flying formwork, trying to move up through repetitive decks as quick as possible, trying to make sure that we are doing a lot of quality control inspections and they're happening at an efficient nature. So we'll fly through this structure a little bit just to kind of see what we're dealing with for the concrete structure, and I'll have Ashley talk about the estimate.
All right, so this is going to be a pretty big number at $14.7 million for this concrete superstructure. That's about 40% of your cost, and it will take about 6 months to complete. During this time, we will also start placing MEP, rough-ins, as well as some elevators. And I'll turn it over to Amelia.
Awesome. So during this entire project, we're going to have our Rio roundups. Other people like to call them toolbox talks. We want to make sure everybody's aware of the safety hazards that are there on the daily job site. This phase is concerned specifically with overhead crane picks, falling objects, large equipment. We need to make sure we have controlled access zones that are maintained and that everybody's aware of the hazards that are going on. We are also prioritizing public safety. We're installing an engineered walkway during this phase that's going to be properly maintained and inspected. Caden.
Due to the large scope of the concrete on this work, we are going to be using some site-specific quality inspection sheets that call out the actual specifications. Additionally, when we get up above grade and using post-tension, we'll be testing those with some proprietary inspection forms. Lastly, we're going to be doing early testing on this concrete at 3, 5, and 7 days to keep our schedule on track. Let's go to phase 4.
So we'll go to the last phase, what we believe is important, so the exterior skin, right? So this is a big portion of the project and what we get to the important milestone, which is dry-in. And so this has a lot of features on it, and where the biggest problems happen with trades is where trades collide, and so we're going to be coordinating that. For the sake of time, I'll probably pass it over to Caden to talk a little bit about quality control at this phase.
Yeah, so for our glazing, we're going to be bringing in the same contractor we used for 1701 Platt. We had a really good experience with them, Dynamic Glass. We're going to be guaranteeing openings for them from day one. We're confident that this is a milestone that we can reach. We're going to be using non-stick built assembly-based manually hoisted glass, putting it up. We're going to be water testing all of it to ensure good sealing, and we will also be testing all materials used for compatibility prior to installation to ensure that there's not going to be issues with adherence down the road.
So that gets us to our important phase. Like I said, we're trying to get to intent improvement, and so after that, there's some important milestones that we want to hit. So, starting this concrete superstructure, we believe, June of 2023, trying to get to that topping out ceremony that everybody likes to have once we get to the top piece of steel. That's about October, late October. And then we believe that tenant improvement can start about December 28th to start getting some other trades in there and some other construction companies that are going to be doing the tenant improvements for the tenants that are going to be placed in here. And we're going to be trying to move through the project closeout as quick as possible, keeping staff on site to making sure we can get through those punch lists, making sure that we can button up everything, making sure that we're coordinating with the tenant improvement companies on site. So we'll take any questions that you guys have.
Good morning.
Morning.
Notice you said you have 0 laydown area. What's your plan for storage, especially if you're going to procure materials ahead of time?
Yeah, so as far as for example, the glazing, our intention for storing our glazing is to actually have it right by where the installation site will be. We plan on getting these installed pretty much as soon as we get them to avoid quality control issues with damage. Additionally, we plan on doing whatever is necessary for the temperature. We've considered concrete blankets and whatnot. Once we get to the phase of the project where we have the garage built out, we intend to use that for some material storage, equipment storage, whatever we can use, small stuff. For example, the suction cups and whatnot for glazing installation.
Good morning. So primary power on this job is going to be a big deal. You have an existing structure that's in the way. It's a historical site, can't do any disturbances. There's a large vault that has to go in. Can you tell me what size your main switchgear is and how you plan to feed that from the vault?
Yeah, if you take it, I'd be happy to pass this over to Edward. We had discussed this earlier today.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I don't have that main switchgear size, but I can get back to you on that, what the exact size for that is. But
Good morning. Turnover has been a challenge in the past. Can you confirm that you will be the team who will be on site building this project? And then if so, your approach to partnering?
yeah, so Rocky Mountain Constructors, we believe that trying to keep a team on the project and develop those relationships with owners is very important, right? So we talked about neighborly relations with the people that we work around to help the owner transition to owning that building and being those neighbors. So we believe the same thing, like even though we're not going to be right next to you, we're still going to have those relationships. So we believe that we're just neighbors in the same cities. So we're trying to make sure that we always have the crew that starts to finish. Even at their project closeout, you start phasing things out, but they're still going to be on site trying to maintain everything and get to that final closeout.
Okay, so I've got a question. This is really under the pricing section for your clarifications and assumptions. You guys have a line item in there basically that states 15% of subcontractors' pricing is added at the line item level. Can you help me better understand what that means? Is your intention to mark up subcontracts 15% and pass that cost off to me?
You want to answer that?
I think would you like to answer that question?
We'll have to check on that. That may be a typo.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, last question, and this one's for Caden. So, one of the foods that you said you love is Nashville hot chicken. Several of us on this board here are from Nashville. We want to know what your level of Nashville hot chicken is.
I think you'd be extremely disappointed to know that I had the option to order it at dinner last night, and I did not.
That'll be a minus 10 points.
You may be.
How's it going? You guys show a weather mode for your crane. Can you help us understand what that means, and at what point does the crane go into that mode?
Yeah, so anytime the crane is not going to be utilized, we'll put it in the weather vane mode, right? So cranes, you have to keep them from, being stationary during high winds, especially when Austin, they can get some tailwinds from hurricanes and things of that nature. So we didn't go into it just due to time, but we'd be using like a loofing crane, so it'll be able to be tilted up. That way it doesn't hit buildings next to it, because we do know that there's a tall building right next to it. So we put it into like a higher elevation and with a smaller radius, and then just leave it in weather vane mode. That way it can swing as the wind pushes it.
Good morning. One thing that caught my attention was the facade testing that you all mentioned. I believe you said you're going to test every window. Two questions on that. What type of testing, and what's your plan to accomplish that and still keep the building on track?
Yeah, so we intend to use water testing with a pressure washer, just making sure that we're not having any issues with the sealant around the windows. No water is getting through into the interior of the building. Obviously, we plan on doing those once the glass is completely sealed in and whatnot, according to manufacturer specs. Additionally, if need be, we are prepared to use pull testing to ensure that we are able to get a negative pressure in the tester, making sure, obviously, also that the sealant is holding. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How do you guys plan to do it all and still maintain the schedule on the glass?
Right, yeah, so that's something that we may have the QCM take care of. Our QCM, Eduardo, he has experience with that in the past, and he helped me with it at 1701. Him and his team have a pretty good idea what they're doing, and you know, they've done a good job on our previous projects similar to this. Logistics-wise, we will be using a 80-foot man lift selected yesterday, which should be available in our submission from yesterday. And I'm sure that with that and the two-person capacity, then we're going to be able to get that taken care of, no problem.
Hi, good morning. Can you elaborate a little bit on what your small business plan is and if there's any opportunity to improve upon that, your goals?
Yeah, so you know, for a small business plan, we have a long-standing relationship in the Austin area, and so we already know a lot of those small businesses. There's always room for improvement, of course, right? So we can utilize some of our trade contractors, either if they need to procure materials from a smaller business, and we can help coordinate that. So if there's like a requirement that you're trying to seek as an owner, then we can definitely work with you on that, no problem.
So I have a question around tenant improvements and the timing that that's starting. How are you going to ensure that you're able to fulfill your contractual obligations through the city of Austin and get your building permit with another contractor in that early?
We're going to be using a proactive approach to take care of that, filing for permits as soon as we are able to. Additionally, we have a good relationship with working with contractors for tenant finishes. We are willing to accommodate for similar GCs that are chosen for tenant finishing as needed. We will have full access to the freight elevator and whatnot in the building, even when we are dried out. So we do not see any issues with potentially being able to work with our other GCs that are fitting out the buildings, as we are willing to accommodate and able to have them.
Amelia, you mentioned toolbox talks. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And then also, what is your plan for being Table 1 compliant with silica?
What was the last part of your question? I'm sorry.
The OSHA Table 1 compliancy for silica?
Right. So in terms of the toolbox talks, Rio roundups, we're going to be ensuring that not only during the abatement process, everybody's made aware of the hazards and made aware of the proper PPE that you need, but with all the phases, being aware of, you know, large excavation hazards, large overhead hazards, anything that you pretty much could cause a large incident on our site. We're going to talk about those during our toolbox talks every week, just to be prepared, you know, God forbid something happens. In terms of silica compliance, whenever is necessary, we'll have like the proper respirators and PPE just to ensure, you know, no inhalation hazards are unnecessarily occurring.
To add on that a little bit, just because COVID's around, right? Everybody has masks now in their pockets, so it's a little bit better too, because people are more willing to put on a mask, even if it's like a better mask too, for silica control. Everybody's been on sites where people are pouring bags of concrete and there's just dust clouding in their face and nobody has a mask on and you're just, yeah, so.
Yeah, good morning. Do you guys self-perform any work, and if so, what trades?
So we actually acquired a steel erection company a few years ago, which is able to be located in our submission. We did this just because we found it was able to offer our partners a cheaper alternative to doing the steel work, and we intend to implement this on 701 Rio.
Yeah, that would include like the staircases, the steel structure on the roof, the steel in the elevator cores, all the metal on that canopy on the front, soffit panels, things like that. The steel erection crew has been doing it for years. We felt that as Austin's a growing area, pre-engineered metal buildings are like a big thing these days. So, you know, we just want to provide more solutions to our owners and the clients.
I appreciate your team's presentation on the plan so far. Certainly we're cost conscious in terms of making sure that our pro forma can pencil on this development and we can move forward. It appears you're in approximately about a 3% fee. Is that something you'd be willing to negotiate to reduce?
So that is definitely something we can discuss. I feel our fee is already lower than most competitors. But yeah, that is definitely something that can be discussed.
So judges, we got time for one last question.
I see in your schedule that you have setting glass before brick. What's your plan to protect the glass from the brick installation? And is that cost covered in your bid?
Yeah, that is cost covered because we're very conscious of the schedule, right? So sometimes the glass guys show up and they don't want to do the work yet because the brick's not in. They want to make sure they're the last ones on site. And so we're going to be utilizing, 3M makes some pretty good adhesive products for protective plastic coverings for the windows. So we're going to put that around the edges for where the brick guys are going to closely tie into that glazing.
Are you going to self-perform that protection, or are you going to have the glazing or the brick guy do it?
We're not sure at this time. That's just such a simple task that, our laborers on site could definitely handle that no problem, and we can just quality control it through Caden to make sure that that it's going to properly protect the glazing. So.
Okay.
All right, well, we thank you for your time responding to the RFP and preparing this presentation. We look forward to reaching out to you with any additional questions we've got down the road.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.